Just remove asset safety from all structures? Oh. Oh, don't tease me. I firmly believe that asset safety should only exist in high sec, maybe low sec. It makes absolutely zero fucking sense that the SEC and Interbus, not SEC, that Interbus can save your stuff outside of Empire space. Just doesn't make any sense at all to me. Cries in ESS. Oh, come on, man. Asset safety ESS tokens is bullshit and you know it. That's the point. Like, these things are things that we've come to rely on, but they're all violations, man. Like, they're all bullshit. Oh, good. Extravaganza. How Interbus... Dude, as I've said before, and man, do I get people pissed off when I say this. The very, very minimum that I would suggest for when it comes to asset safety changes is the removal of supers and titans from asset safety. That's it. Just do that and let people adjust to it for a little while, and I think that you'd be fine. That tied you over for at least a year. Yeah, asset safety and systems with NPC structures is a really good one. Is it weird that I want to be able to destroy my ship by eating it into a sun? You mean like the Inferno drug? You say save, but 100 bill in asset safety bill that I'm not wanting to pay. Yes, but the moment you do, it is worth it to you to pay. You have it. That's the difference. Here's the thing. The biggest change to the balance of the game created by asset safety, in my opinion, is the creation of the concept of the Titan cache. Think about that. Prior to this, every single Titan had to have a character that was trained in Titan and Omega sitting in it. Well, paid account sitting in it. The ability for an empire, for a player group, to have Titan caches in which multiple losses could be done, that replacements could be made quickly, and logistics was not a consideration necessarily. And more importantly, those ships are inassailable, because the worst thing you could possibly, the worst you can do to them is just drop them into asset safety. That change broke a lot of things, in nullsec included, especially. And the problem is that we still, as a player base, have a difficulty accepting the real cause of our problem, right? Like, we all can accept that there's a problem. We can there was accepting that it was stagnation. There was accepting that there was no point to fighting. That asset safety was causing a problem when it came to meaningful conflict between players. But the real issue is Titan caches. Supers too, obviously, but you know, like that, Titans were never conceived. In fact, were explicitly designed to not be able to be cached. This is why I say that if you're going to allow capitals and supers to be in asset safety, then you might as well just completely remove the restriction on docking altogether, because the entire point of that restriction has been undermined. That's what frustrates me. That frustrates me. Because every single time I talk to nullsec people, they immediately balk at that, acting like their Titans are somehow special. The fact that they managed to build all these Titans during the era of overabundance and glut Now that they have it, it's somehow they're entitled to not only, you know, always have them be good and powerful, but always have them there as in their entire board. It's not enough to simply be like, okay, well, you have to pare down to one Titan if you want. Or you have to at least accept the idea that if your territory goes undefended and your structure blows up with your Titan in it, you lose it. By the way, I've had people mention this as a side effect, and I did not think about this originally, which is that when I was talking to people about Titans being removed from, by the way, I understand it's also supers, but I just say Titans because that's it's a better soundbite. But somebody commented about, oh, so the Titans can drop. No, 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 no. If a Keepstar dies with a Titan in it, nobody gets it. Nobody gets it. Blow that fucker up. That's what you get for not defending your supplies. The only benefit of asset safety that should be considered is maybe for long-term game breaks. Yeah, I honestly don't even necessarily, like, I really hate that argument about, what about the person that's AFK for 6 months or whatever? Like, then you come back to a lot of your, like, you are not allowed to have holdings in the sandbox if you're not even, like, engaging with the sandbox, right? The sandbox will wash you away. You can come back and keep playing, but you can't expect your sandcastle to still be there. Luke Can Magic, I've missed the wonders of a Titan popping out of a small box. I mean, maybe, fine, give them a chance to drop. I don't know. Yeah. What's funny is people go, well, do you own Titans? And I'm like, no. And they're like, well, then you don't have any place to talk. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm on the other side of the coin. Like, sure, I can admit to the fact that I have bias, but only because it's the opposite bias of yours. I came back after years and found most of my stuff in asset safety. Every can is a present. I like it. Look, man, if you want to keep your stuff safe before you go on vacation or whatever, you need to put it into a station, NPC station. Period. That's it. It's too easy. So here's the thing. For people that feel that I don't understand what I'm talking about because I'm not doing nullsec, when I first joined this game, the very first thing I did, within a month, I was pulled into Providence, into a group called Band of Builders, which was awesome because everybody thought that we were Bob, or at least some remnants of it, so people shit on us even though we weren't. But either way, we were a band of builders within the Alliance Sodalitas XX, and the fact that you've never heard of either of those should probably tell you something. So I joined in July 14th. By the end of August, I went to a weekend camping trip, a 4-day camping trip, and came back, and our entire sovereignty and everything I had was taken. That's the breaks, man. There was no asset safety. I had to wait for years to be able to negotiate that shit out. And a lot of it's still there. Now, a lot of it's still like punishers that are totally terrible. Hold on. It's actually, I kind of want to see if I don't think I still have them on this character. I think I've moved most of that assets to a different character. Yeah, I must have. Oh, well. But yeah, I mean, guess what? Things happen in Eve. Bad things happen in Eve. You just get to deal with them. Sometimes your internet goes out while you're in the abyss. It happens, man. Sometimes, you know what? Hold on. Sometimes, you want, hold on. Shh. Nobody likes you. Oh, damn it. I just sieged an extra cycle. Sometimes you jump into an Edencom system and then your computer B-sods the second you jump through. Sometimes that happens. It happens. It absolutely happens. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You can either be bitchy about it and get nothing done, or you can recover from it and keep working. That's it. That's your only choices. I did manage to actually secure some of these implants because it happened during the Easter event, but still, sometimes it happens. I did put in a petition, but then when they were like, so what exactly did happen? I was like, I'm not even going to respond. Oh, you asked a question. You got me. But third world... I also... So, by the way, I on the other hand, I do come from the military. So the idea of, like, requiring constant working, logging in and stuff, like... I was a big advocate of login rewards having extra days of grace, because the idea that like a military guy could go on a field operation for a weekend and therefore not be able to get all of the bonuses of a login reward during a holiday just kind of sucks. The idea that some people get called away from the game with a moment's notice is something that needs to be considered. However, couple things. One, from a wormhole perspective, that risk is a fundamental part of the wormhole experience that you accept upon taking on the understanding of wormhole, upon entering into wormhole life, right? Like, yeah, if you blink for 2 days, your shit could go away. Them's the breaks. That's what happens when you live on the wild frontier. Nullsec is a little bit different. I would suggest that if a Nullsec guy loses all their stuff because of like a field operation or something like that, chances are their organization completely failed them, right? And most of all, if you're a soldier that knows that you get deployed and stuff like that, keep the majority of your stuff in NPC stations. Asset safety is fine. Asset safety is fine. I don't not like it at its, like, from its very basic thing. I don't like the idea, like, I think that the justification of it falls apart when it comes to like things like nullsec and stuff. But more importantly, like I said, my only real gripe about asset safety is supers and carriers, or supers and titans, because it is a violation of the rest of the rule system. It is in conflict with the rest of the design. And yes, I know that dealing with that would suck. It doesn't make it any less true. The problem is trying to balance what's reasonable from a gameplay mechanic to what's good for player retention. The whole player retention thing is kind of an odd one. Because if you could argue that people are quitting because it's too hard, I could argue that people are quitting because there's no point to it anymore. Right? I could argue, I can point to Dark Souls and the rest of From Software games and say, look, the market demands hard, complicated, but fair games. The the essence of what Eve is, if it leans into it and embraces it, is something that can be attractive to people. A wide audience, too, if done correctly. Which then leads you to ask the question, what does Elden Ring do that differently than EVE Online that changes the way that people perceive the game, their expectations of the game, and what they're willing to tolerate versus effort they're willing to put into? I'll be honest with you. The vast majority of EVE players nowadays are soft. Soft as hell. They have no idea how to fit a ship. They probably don't even know how to fly a ship. People like celebrate the fact that they're just F1 monkeys, right? If we're going to play a game in which we celebrate how deep and complex and difficult and technical and sandbox and make your effect, then ultimately you're going to need those challenges to be real and fair. And the best way to do that is actually through better PvE. So there's that too. As long as it's done fairly. Plus Elden Rings in those games only need to sell each person once, not monthly like EVE. Yeah, that's true. But EVE is all... my point... I think that my point still stands. Which is that the mere notion that people are going to quit because it's too hard, there's also likely people that are quitting because it's not engaging enough. I would argue that that's probably the bigger problem, right? So, or to put it a different way, if people are going to use the fact that it's too much to ask of somebody for player retention to do something, especially for an experienced player, we're not talking about what a new player has to do. An experienced player, years in the game, billions of ISK, anything like that, right? If you're afraid that something that they're going to do, that a balance change that CCP is going to do is going to noticeably damage retention in a way because enough people are going to quit, well, man, I've totally lost my point. I hate to break it to you, but I got it. Those players are holding the design of the game ransom through emotional blackmail. Period. If you don't like it, don't fucking play it. Somebody else will. Somebody else might. You don't want to own Sov? Don't own Sov. You don't want to live in a wormhole? You don't like what the wormhole does? Don't live in it. We choose how we engage with this or how we don't engage with it. But the point is that if the argument is you need to make this better for me or I'm going to take my ball and go home, well, fucking go home. That is not what this sandbox is about. This sandbox is about analyzing the world as it exists and finding your place in it and eventually making your mark. You don't make your mark by whining about it. It's incredible hearing him about the game and the way that he plays it. I mean, I am fascinated by this game. I think that this game is important. Like, legitimately important. Like valuable for the human species important. And I think that, and I've said this before and people had disagreed with me, but I still stand by it. This game, the actual game itself, the integrity of it, and its continuation is more important than any one of us players. because it's us to find our place within the game. I feel that too. In one of the Eve talk shows, one nullsec block rep said that the blackout was bad because it made things too risky. So people wouldn't undock, and nobody is tough enough for that kind of life. But I would say their group might not be tough enough. Exactly. Get the fuck out and let somebody else who can come in. Exactly. Blackout pissed me off so bad. Blackout pissed me off so bad. I cannot believe that anyone came to me with a straight face, not making a joke, and said to me that they don't like it because they shouldn't have to deal with non-consensual PvE. That is the most, lack of self-awareness I have ever seen in any argument by the player base in 12 years of playing this game. The argument that you should be able to be protected from non-consensual PvE is fucking dumb. Every single person that quits because nullsec is too hard because rats are on the gate camps, leave. Nullsec is dangerous. If you don't want to deal with the danger, don't deal with it. I don't want to deal with it. That's why I'm in high sec. I have to deal with my own dangers. That's why I'm in low sec. That's why I do these other things. When I go to nullsec, I prepare for there to be gate camps on the gates. It's not that hard. The universe is by itself dangerous. It's not just us. What? Oh, yeah. I mean, there were problems with the drifter attacks, the D-scan thing and other stuff like that. Like, there were issues. And I'm okay with calling those out and, iterating on those. But the notion that blackout should not have happened is ridiculous. Because here's the thing. It goes back to that, gankers are the weather thing that I mentioned earlier, right? Like, mechanics leave you exposed. Mistakes that you make open yourself up to be punished by other players. Or more importantly, risks that you take open you up to potentially being punished by players. And that risk is the thing that makes it worthwhile or is a balancing factor. In other words, if that risk didn't work or wasn't present, then the reward would not be well tuned. However, that risk is manifested only when there is an actual player there willing to punish you for the mistake that you've made. You're not going to get arrested or fined every single time you run a red light. But if you do it in front of a cop, you will. You get what I'm saying? So the issue is that there's a lot of nullsec infrastructure that the balance of it, when we talk about risk versus reward when it comes to null security space, the vast majority of that risk versus reward comes from other players, right? And since that is true, that means that if you can reduce or eliminate the risk from those players, then you end up undermining the risk versus reward system. So, and Celebexes are the way that they are because and Celebex's counter is the fact that they are vulnerable to sabotage, right? A player group can come in there and quickly siege it out, hopefully before somebody can react, especially if there's multiple strikes in multiple places. If you don't react fast enough, they reinforce your structure. It's a flex structure. It goes into low power. You no longer have that gate jump, right? Like, the whole point is that the big balancing factor to these massive... We talk about how powerful, how overpowered gate bridge networks are. Gate bridge networks are not overpowered. They're just not balanced. And they're not balanced because there's something wrong with them, although I think that their hit points are a little bit low. They're not balanced because players are not manifesting the threat that balances them. So what do? You have a bunch of NPCs show up and reinforce everything. Nothing that the drifters exposed was a weakness that wasn't already there. These forces just relied on other players not capitalizing on them. That's what made them upset. And what's funny is, in the end, here's the important thing about the drifter attacks, okay? In the end, every single time they say that it ended the war, I just want to point out something. No drifter ever destroyed a structure. In fact, no drifter actually threatened to destroy a structure. At worst, they reinforced a structure. But they didn't come back to the timer. Now, some people said that, oh, that already leaves us exposed. Whatever. But my point is that if you had just continued the war and changed nothing, the drifters would not have damaged your territory. In the end. You just didn't know that at the time. That's what I find interesting.